in my heart each spring. Now the spring romance doesn't stand a chance. Promise my first dance to winter. All I've got to show is a splinter for my little fling. Spring this year has got me feeling like a horse that never left the post. I lie in my room, staring up at the ceiling. Spring can really hang you up the most. Morning's kiss wakes trees and flowers, and to them I like to drink a toast. I walk in the park just to kill the lonely hours. Spring can really hang you up the most. All afternoon, those birds twitter twit. I know the tune. This is love, this is it. Heard it before, and I know the score. And I've decided that spring is a bore. Love seems sure around the near. No, it's April. Love is just a ghost. Spring arrived on time. Only what's become of you, dear? Spring can really hang you up the most. Spring can really hang you up the most. College boys are writing sonnets, and to them I like to drink a toast. I'm on the shelf next to last year's Easter bonnets. Spring can really hang you up the love came along. I hoped it would last. We had our day. Now it's all in the past. Spring came along, a season of sun, full of sweet promise. that something went wrong. Doctors once prescribed a tonic, sulfur and molasses was the dose. Didn't help one bit. My condition must be chronic. Spring can really wake you up the most. All alone, the party is over. Old man Winter was a gracious host. Fine, will you keep parade? Snow to hide the clover. Spring can really hang you up the most.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you, Isabella, for sharing your musical gift with us today. Please use the chat to share your applause. We are thankful for our partnership with the Jazz Institute of Chicago, equipping young people to be their best selves. As a pianist, vocalist, and band leader, Isabella Isherwood has had the pleasure of sharing her music in many venues throughout Chicago, including the Jazz Showcase, Andy's Jazz Club, Constellation Chicago, Winter's Jazz Club, and the annual Chicago Jazz Festival. In addition to her music, Isabella is also an actor on stage and screen. She is also a vocal coach, accompanist, keyboardist, and musical director on shows across Chicago's vibrant theater community. Isabella studied at Indiana University's Jacobs School of Music and Roosevelt University's Conservatory of Performing Arts. Thank you, Isabella. It is our pleasure to welcome all of you to UCAN's Women's Leadership Forum. I am Nikki DeLimo from UCAN, serving as the chair for Women & Co., one of UCAN's employee resource groups. UCAN strives to build strong youth and families through compassionate healing, education, and empowerment. Diversity, equity, and inclusion at UCAN is one of the cornerstones of our work. DEI is in our DNA, and we continue to strive to build an inclusive organization who engages community. We have a purpose-driven, dynamic, diverse panel of women leaders excited to be here today. And I am honored to introduce our moderator for this dialogue, Heather Ireland Robinson. Heather is the Jazz Institute of Chicago's executive director. Committed to providing creative opportunities to communities, she also served as executive director of the Beverly Arts Center and the historic Southside Community Arts Center. With a 22+ year career and a belief that arts are a basic human right and an intrinsic human need, Heather's experiences have included leadership programming and management with some of Chicago's foremost institutions, including After School Matters, Gallery 37, Marwin, and the Chicago Park District. She was the founder of the People's Jazz Theater, and her children's plays have been produced at the DuSable Museum, Taste of Chicago, the Chicago Jazz Festival, and the Chicago Cultural Center. She includes the Goodman, Red Moon, Impact, Pegasus Players, and NBC's ER among her acting credits. Heather holds a BS in advertising from the University of Illinois at Urbana and an MFA in acting from DePaul. Without further ado, welcome Heather Ireland Robinson.
Thank you so much, Nikki, and thank you, UCAN, for this amazing day. Happy Women's History Month. We hope to bring you some bright joy on this gray Chicago day. I'm looking out at the lake, which I cannot see for the fog. In just a minute, I'm going to let our panelists come in, but I just wanted to say, as executive director of the Jazz Institute of Chicago, Isabella is one of our former students. She was a part of our student council. She was emerging artist. She played the Jazz Fest at age 14. She was also a part of the Women in Jazz Leadership Initiative and produced a show my first week here at the Jazz Institute. There was a show that was produced at the Garfield Park Conservatory by these young women. So there were about 20 young women that produced this show. And Isabella came up to me, and I think she was 14 at the time, and said, Heather, congratulations. Welcome to the Jazz Institute. I've been wanting to meet you. What leadership and networking and recognizing of the need for women to connect. So Isabella is already a star, and I'm sure you were delighted, just as we were, to that ode to spring. So I just wanted to shout Isabella out just a little bit more, but welcome everybody to a purposed plan. I am gonna have all of our panelists come on now so we can see all of your faces, and I'll introduce them in the order that they are on the invitation. And in this world of Google, LinkedIn, we can look up these amazing women and read their arm's length books of credits and wonderful things that they've done. We've got educators, marketing experts, politics, health, workforce development. So I'll leave it to you all to do that. But I have some fun facts about each of them first, and they'll wave as we go, and their names are in the corner too. We have Cynthia Nambo, who is a leadership coach with the Network for College Success at the University of Chicago. So our education person. She's also a girl mom, or I guess I should say a woman mom, having raised two ladies and taking care of them. We also have Karen Norrington Reeves, who is the former founding CEO of Chicago Cook Workforce Partnership. And congrats on all the new things happening with you, Ms. Karen. In our medical area, we've got Cheryl Rutker Whitaker, MD, MPH, FACP. Again, look those up, or she might tell us the whole alphabet before we're out of here. She is currently the Chief Executive Officer of Complete Care Management Partners, LLC. And I think Cynthia and I might be the only people on here who do not have dogs. My husband and my daughter would love that, but I especially love that Cheryl's dogs are named Jazz and Blues. I've got to meet those puppies. I really want to. And last but absolutely not least, joining us all the way from Connecticut, we have Erin Thomas, who is the Senior Communications Director for PepsiCo. She enjoys tennis, which I love, and she lives with her daughters and husband right across the street. We just found out today from her husband's childhood home. So before this started, we all had a wonderful chat about nostalgia. And I'll be honest with you all, we also had a chat about makeup and our backgrounds and flowers. And I say that because, you know, I heard a story from Melody Hobson once, and I'll kick off with this story. And she said she was speaking at an event, and she and another woman were kind of off to the side, and they started talking about fashion. And this man came up and said, what are y'all talking about, clothes? And Melody was like, actually, yes, we are. We're talking about, you know, where we got these clothes and things like that. And she said, you all talk about cars, sports, cigars, and whatever, and nobody questions that. So I think today we're going to talk a lot about authenticity and purpose and being who you are, and living in those spaces that so often aren't for us. So again, ladies, welcome. Happy Women's History Month. Happy Supreme Court nomination day 2 or 3. That's all I'll say about that. I know we're sending the good vibes that way, because it is a special day, whatever way it goes, but we know which way it's gonna go. So ladies, thank you all for being here, taking the time out to share with the women in the audience and just everywhere about your role and your path. So I have several questions here, and I think we'll just, if spirit hits you, you know, go ahead and answer. And we've got that raise hand function, but let's just go. Ladies, how would you define leadership? And has that definition changed or shifted, whether it's the crisis that we've recently kind of gone through or just in your life? So how do you define leadership?
Well, I can go. It has definitely changed. I do see when I first started in leadership, it was about supporting what was around us and supporting others, being of service, as most people will say, service leadership. I still believe that, but I think it's layered and more complex than that. Leadership is also identifying opportunities to transform systems that can promote us and promote our authenticity, promote our identities. And that's now how I see leadership, and leadership in building others up, building building identity, and also remembering who you are and grounding yourself in that. And as a leadership coach, as an executive leadership coach, that's what I have to do for transformation.
I'll add to that, Heather. First, thanks for having us today and convening us during this great Women's History Month. This is an extraordinary day and time that we live in. So I'll kind of piggyback on what Cynthia was saying about building up others, right? A leader, you know, needs to, she can't lead alone. She usually has to lead a team. So being able to find in others what's needed to help them grow, to execute in their areas is a really important part of leadership. So there, and then the second thing I'll say is the ability to act and move an organization or cause forward, even when you don't know every single thing. Women tend to be paralyzed by perfection. They want to know 100% of the details and want to know everything. And when that's warranted, I'm good with that. I don't want to say that, you know, but there'll be times when you don't have all the information, and you'll need to learn to kind of basically discern what's the most important criteria you need to move forward. And then you may need to make a decision, sometimes a leap. The COVID pandemic showed us lots of different styles of leadership. And you know, really, to me, should be studied for years and years and decades to come as we think about how we move forward in times when things are uncertain. So those are my two kind of tips. I mean, this is a question, Heather, we could talk about all day long, but I think, you know, learning how to, as a leader, grow into building others. So that means you have to be secure in yourself. I want to point that out. You do need to be secure and not intimidated by, you got 7 great people on your team. You don't want to be intimidated because somebody really knows their area. You want to really help that person grow. Maybe they'll grow past you, grow out, find another job. That's okay. But, you know, being not afraid to build teams, build others, and then sometimes leading in uncertainty, being comfortable making decisions when you don't know everything.
I'll add to that. You know, Cynthia really hit on the pieces that I often talk about. Being a leader of leaders, like our responsibility is to develop those who are coming along with us. And to Cheryl's point about not allowing yourself to be intimidated, you want to have smart people around you. You want to have around you the people who know the things that you don't know. Your responsibility, I think, is to have folks who complement your style, and also folks who depart from your style. You want people who have strengths that you don't have and who help to shore up your own weaknesses. The other piece that I think is incredibly important in leadership is having a vision. You have to understand, to Cheryl's point, you don't need to know everything. You don't even need to know the path to get there. You need to understand the destination and be willing to put one foot in front of the other. But the other piece is you have to have as much of a sense of as possible about that vision that you can share with others and get them to buy into, believe in, and support it, so that all of you are moving together. The other thing that I think is really critical in leadership, you know, the title is not the most important thing. There are lots of people with titles that connote leadership who are not leaders, who are not true leaders, who are not good leaders, who are not impactful, and who don't instill in their people a sense of purpose and a sense of value. And so it is not in the title, it is in the behavior, and it is in your heart. It really is about how you invest in community, how you invest in the people within your organization, and how you invest in the vision that has been set forth for that organization to accomplish.
I love the idea of confidently saying,
would
I don't
say,
know.
you know,
Oh, go ahead, Erin. Mhm.
commitment to servant leadership, and one of the dimensions of that that has become exponentially more important during COVID is active listening. You know, it shattered the status quo, absolutely. And for us to serve our customers or consumers, you know, in my business, we had to listen to how changed their circumstances are and what they needed now, because it didn't matter what we did yesterday. And then from a community perspective, wow, you know, that was, you know, I have to thank Claude and the UCAN team for sitting down with us and educating on us on what can we do to lean in to address the challenges that have been massively exacerbated by the pandemic. And so I think even on a one-to-one level, you know, our lives have changed. Think of the impacts of our teams and mental health and family circumstances are so extenuating now and will be for years. So over the pandemic, my investment of time and active listening to individuals on my team about their personal experiences and what they were facing and bringing to the table shifted. And I have to say that's a welcome change and one that I intend to keep. Because at the end of the day, it's really not about what you do, but how you do it and with whom. So I think active listening was a massive shift in my leadership style over COVID.
Yeah, and just that deep care. You know, 2 years ago, if somebody had said, I need to stay home to look at my plants, let's say 3 years ago, we would have said, is this person okay? Or no, the work won't get done. Now we can say, look at your plants, hug your dog, you know, eat a carrot, whatever you need to do. And I think that's one of the many wonderful things that's come out of that. Speaking of challenges and obstacles, what are some ways that you have moved past obstacles in your life? I think this is such a direct and important question that we don't ask, and it could be professionally or personally. You know, what did it take to move past an obstacle in your life?
I'm a big fan of calling a thing. So you can't move past any obstacle that you don't acknowledge. And a lot of what I see happening, you know, in work or just in personal relationships is that people are not acknowledging the source of the pain. You can't heal it if you won't name it. So you got to name it, you got to claim it, and then you pour the energy into the healing. And so for me, there is value in the grieving. So I've just stepped away from what has been to date my greatest life's work, spending, you know, over 11 years leading the partnership. And it breaks my heart every single day. And so I have moments where I'm like, oh, that hit me. I need to sit with that for a second, right? And so I just think it's really, really important that we grieve. I think there are so many, I call them the walking wounded. There's so many people walking around who are not acknowledging past pains. And I liken it to folks having a scab. You know, you fell down when you were a kid and you get the owie and the scab's over. But if you're not protecting that, then you chafe up against somebody and boom, that scab is pulled off, right? And so I think that a lot of moving beyond is dealing in the present before you can get to the next space.
Yes, I can add to that, Karen. Thank you so much for bringing the word healing. I was waiting to see when that would come into play. One of the things I think we do need to assume is that there are personal obstacles, and that may be caused by structural obstacles. And then it can go back and forth, right? We have a personal responsibility if we're uplifting or upholding those structural obstacles, and then we have a responsibility if the structure is doing it to the person, right? And so now I'm embracing this new level in leadership, transformational leadership that includes healing. It has to. It is essential. My personal obstacles were, again, informed and structured by the system of obstacles of gender and race, being Mexicana. was definitely what people saw as an obstacle. I did not see it. I was wondering where my source of pain was coming from for sure as I was in evolution of my leadership. But you know, you can maybe hear a bit of an accent in my voice, and I could see, you know, people, the way they would approach me. I'm bilingual. If I used a word in Spanish in an English dominant space, that was seen very differently. I am not as trusted initially. I am not as legitimate initially to people, and I have to prove myself, not only as a woman. I cannot separate the race. I cannot separate ethnicity. In addition, I come, you know, from not the middle class. I may be that now. So those are other things that were obstacles in the structure, but not obstacles that were my own necessarily. And I think that's the other piece that I think is so important in terms of leadership, is how we creating, as leaders, how are we creating other leaders, and how are we creating systems so that we heal everyone. Everyone is experiencing trauma at some level, either on the streets, in your everyday life, in your families, and in your workplace. We cannot ignore that any longer. And I really appreciate, Karen, you bringing that into the conversation so soon, so quickly. And I also think that's one of our, if you will, superpowers as women and women of color, that we can actually bring that into the workplace. So I feel like this is a beautiful conversation. Thank you for opening that up, Karen.
I'll just add a slightly different spin, but just as an entrepreneur, so I'm always, you know, when you're building a company from scratch or you're working uphill, you're hiring people, you're firing people, you're resetting teams, you're reorganizing. So you're in a constant state of movement. That not making a decision is the same thing as making a decision. So it goes back to an earlier speaker said, hey, you have to acknowledge the obstacle. So we have to acknowledge the problem, what the solution is, and then you can decide to act or not. So, but just understand that whether you decide to act or not, you're actually making a decision. And that was something I learned about 7 or 8 years ago. A top flight HR consultant who does executive coaching, she said, well, Dr. Whitaker, you know, not making a decision is the same as making a decision. And guys, while that may sound very apparent to you, I literally was like, oh my God, you know, I literally, you know, I look back, I just started laughing out loud. So I think the other thing in terms of kind of obstacles and working with them, you know, I tend to think about, certainly there's something I want to do, and and sure, people can block what you want to do, et cetera. But, you know, as you move in your career, think about every person you meet as a part of a network that's helping you, the universe, like your universe, achieve what you want to achieve. So I tend to make friends across all professions, all sort of layers. I'm very non-hierarchical in how I think about people. Whenever I walk into a building, I say hi to the janitor. Anybody I see, I say hello. I just do, because they're humans. So that has actually helped me, I think, in my career as I moved along. And actually, I think I'm the oldest one on this panel. So I'll say, oh, I'm super wise here. But you know, just acknowledging all of humanity, I think it's helpful to me. So I consider that just one of my superpowers, if you will, because I believe that, you know, if I'm doing good, everybody should believe in it. And so I don't see obstacles. I see, well, okay, this is my new strategy where I'm going to chip away at this particular obstacle. So thanks for that question, Heather. That's a tough one, but very interesting.
I just love the image of as you meet, first of all, meeting people, you know, greeting people just as humans, but also people that you meet. How are they gonna, not just for using them, but how are they gonna help with your story? How can all these people help? This is just beautiful, beautiful conversation. Just a housekeeping note, everybody out there in internet TV land, please start to put your questions in the Q&A section. And I'm loving all these sound bites. I think we've made 29 t-shirts and 42 postcards already, just with the quotes. And Bianca's doing a great job of putting those in the chat. So let's keep the chat lit, everyone, and let's, you know, start some Q&As for later. I told that story about Isabella at the beginning. I'm sure we all have stories about how we've lifted up or celebrated women in the past, whether that's all women, by celebrating Women's History Month, or women in our families, or women in the workplace. Can each of you tell a story or think of a time when you've celebrated or uplifted women or a woman in the past? And I just want to acknowledge that I think all of you are doing that just in your roles, just in your titles, and just in your everyday lives. So thank you. We celebrate that, but is there a specific time you can think about where you've uplifted or celebrated women or girls?
Well, I have like two stories. Let's see which one comes out. One of the things that I really love to engage in is getting to know people. So to Cheryl's point, like, how are we seeing, like really seeing people, and who they are, and what their authenticity is, and what it can look like. Again, back to the structural obstacles, that kind of, it causes a filter about how we see people and how we treat them. And so, it takes a toll on women. So at times when I was a principal, from the registrar to the woman who was cleaning to the business temp, who then became the business manager, who now, even did some of the principal responsibilities. During my tenure there were just constant conversations about her brilliance, right? And we don't necessarily have those conversations. We kind of, at times end up in a conversation of how I didn't do this right, or I'm not good at. And as an educator, for me, that's not the conversation to have. It's, what do you know? What do you want to know? And what do you want to grow? And so I think that's the piece that the countless conversations of how she just did not think she was up to par, and how we would lead certain things in the school, and she wanted me to do it. And I said, no, you do it. And she would take the mic, right? She would take the podium, and she would lead us through things. And that's one of the things I think that led for, her to start taking on different leadership roles. And that's how I know that that's the right path to take, and to continue to take, to uplift women. So that's one story. I'd like to invite others, because I have other ones with young women, which is exciting as well.
Aaron, are you talking? Okay, can't hear you.
No. Sphere of influence we each have, right? It could be as simple as posting something, or as, heartfelt and determined as, Cynthia, with your coaching and mentorship. And, I start my own household with my own, friends and family, but some of the work that I'm proudest of are, against those systemic barriers and changes. And I spent the last 4 years in our company's private nonprofit, the PepsiCo Foundation, and helped to build a program with CARE to support thousands of female farmers in 6 different countries. And really that was empowering them with the right supplies, access to capital, and resources to be leaders of teams, and not just provide for their families, but express their leadership and really pursue their passions. At the same time, making food more locally available, sustainable, healthy, reduce GHG emissions, and so there were clear wins on both sides. But traveling to the countries where we were working with these incredible farmers and getting them the resources that they needed really changed my perspective on, that clearly women in a different workplace that has tremendous power for all of us in the food system. So that's one that's made a big impact on me. And I think, day to day, we have a powerful role to play in, providing that visible leadership or feedback to women that we come in contact with. Just, it goes a long way. That was awesome, or have you thought about that? Taking the 20 seconds or the 20 minutes to provide that care and concern. And I think as leaders of professional women, also, it used to be easy. Do you remember that term, leave loudly? At the end of the day, you would pack your things up and go home and help others prioritize work-life balance. I mean, we're sometimes on Zoom all day. And so I've just kind of committed myself to, when I'm out for a doctor's appointment, saying that explicitly and encouraging my colleagues to do the same, to put our health first so we can be of service to one another and long-term goals, and just to be more explicit in how I'm trying to care for myself and wellness long-term, so that, and encourage them to do the same. So little things like that on a day-to-day basis, I think, can help each other.
And you never know. I love that term, leave loudly. I actually heard that before as working a few years ago and leaving to get my children. I'm the only mother here. Well, I was. I've changed that. We got some dads now. But at the time, I was the only parent, I should say. And I'd feel like, I'm going to soccer practice. I got to go get the kids. I'm going to get my kids. I got to go to this thing. And a couple of reasons that could work. It's authentic, but I may be inspiring someone else. Michelle Obama said that's how she got to know it's okay to take care of your kids. You know, she was looking up at Valerie Jarrett, like, I got to go. And it planted a seed in her to say, wait, I can be a mother and do this as well. You just never know who's watching your authenticity. So I love that, leaving loudly. Okay, I always love this question. What message would you give to your 21-year-old self? We know that's legal drinking age. We know all that 21 can mean. So what would you say to your, but it's also leaving school. Our oldest will be 22 in a few weeks. He's in his senior year at college. So lots of things going on when you're 21, getting ready to make some potentially life-changing decisions. So what would you tell your 21-year-old self?
I would tell her, you are enough.
I'll add, trust your gut. It's okay to call mom or a trusted adult if you have a question. So we're not saying go out there and just figure it all out by yourself. It's okay to call home. And, start to really line up your values and let that be reflected in the people that you surround yourself with. Those early friends you choose are really important. In the 20s, you can make a lot of really good decisions that set you up for a really strong career or life or family, whatever it is you're looking for. But you could also make some really bad ones wow, if you'll spend a lot of time digging yourself out. So for the younger women, I encourage you to, really think about kind of what your values are and try to build your network and be intentional about kind of protecting those values.
Lovely. We're in an interesting place with women in the workforce. A lot of the times we're in those seats. What does it mean once we're in those seats? What do we do? What's our responsibility? How would you describe the current state of women in the workforce?
So this is my area of expertise, obviously, over the past decade plus. I was actually just reading something today talking about the minimum wage and the need to increase the minimum wage, and how the majority of sub-minimum wage workers, sub $15 an hour workers in this country are women and women of color. And so when I think about the current state of the labor force, I think we've made some significant gains. You have to acknowledge that we have, women CEOs, and we've got a female vice president of the United States, and we're about to get another woman of color on the Supreme Court. I don't want to downplay any of some of these significant things. Look, we've got a female mayor of the city of Chicago, we've got a female mayor, a female county board president. But the reality is that on the ground, in our communities, we still see women, and women of color in particular, being left behind. And, the issues that the pandemic laid bare were things that Black and brown and female and low wage workers already knew. You know, it was shining a light for the rest of the people who were apparently very clueless. But the rest of us knew what the struggle was, right? And the struggle only got worse in the pandemic. So with respect to women in the workplace, women lost their jobs at greater rates. Women had to be caregivers and kinship care. When I say that, I don't mean just caring for our children. I mean caring for our sick and ailing parents. I mean caring for extended family members, caring for siblings. There has been a significant amount of loss over the past 2 years that is just being written off. The mental health, the impact to our mental health has been probably one of the most significant in our generation, in our lifetime. And so women are fed up. Women want quality jobs. Let me say that again, quality jobs, not just a job, not just any old job. Women want jobs that allow them to take care of their families, take care of themselves with a little bit of ounce of squishiness that we have left over to support ourselves and pour back in. And we want flexibility, and we want to be paid what we're worth. I mean, that is really the state. When I talk to women across the country, that is really where women are. We're tired and want to be valued and want to work in an environment that meets us in our whole selves and recognizes and understands all of the many balls that we're juggling in the air.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that as well. I would say we were already saturated. We're saturated some more through this pandemic, and we carry and we care, and we will carry and we will care until there is success and that we really do provide for others. And that's something we need to also be very real about. It is not only for ourselves, but it is for our communities, it is for our families, it is for the future generation. We hold all of that in our minds and in our hearts, and we will do what is needed and pay. One of the things I've been looking at also is Latina leadership. And I've been seeing, and I'm sure this is happening in other communities as well, that women, because of the responsibilities they have of care and carry, end up not getting into executive positions until later in their life. And then later in their life, 50s, 60s, for some people and some organizations, it's too late, right? You start not being eligible for certain leadership programs. You start being ignored or passed over. And then they're like, well, why didn't she seize the moment? Well, she was seizing the moment for everyone else. And so how do we start to create, right, the system that cares and invests in the woman who cares and carries? And so, there's so much more I could talk about in that. There are ceilings, there are cliffs, there are walls, glass ones, and we keep bumping into them. One of the other research pieces that are coming out there in terms of women in leadership and women of color in leadership is when there is a problem in the organization, they put her there, and then she has to carry again, and they penalize, right, her leadership, and they make it about her leadership when it is really the system. And so how do we start to break that down? And again, transformational healing systems is what we need. I'd like to invite my other sisters to please come in.
No, Cynthia, thank you. I want a couple of things. First, when you get into the workplace, it's really important to, I asked a young woman this the other day. I said, well, you're new to the organization. Who's your sponsor? And she said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, who cares that you show up every day? Or who cares if you're out? Your work is good. Who cares that you're there, that you're not there? And she said, I don't have anyone. I said, well, I want you to really think about that, because if you want to do well in this organization, which was heavily male oriented, you're going to want to find a sponsor, not just a mentor, but someone who is really caring about your career success. So I want to point that out for the younger women that, as you think about the workplace, it is not just like a thing, it's people. And like I was talking to you about the common humanity that I'm always seeking to acknowledge, that's in the workplace too. You just got to locate it. And I would just encourage you that work is not just a job. It's really the people that are there, that collection of people, and how you can interact with them. The second thing though, during COVID, and I want to speak to all my colleagues here, Karen, Cynthia, your comments were about kind of the healing part of what went down during COVID and how it impacted families. As my first company, Next Level Health, was winding down, we had about 35, 40 employees. That was right at the height of COVID. And you know what? There was not a lot of work going on, and I knew it. People were out sick with COVID. Their families were sick. They were going to funerals. They were going to a lot of funerals. And most of my folks were South and West Side based. And so I knew what was going on. And guys, I did not let a single person go. Like I knew, like we're in a pandemic, right? It's like, hello. So being human as a leader and recognizing sometimes it's just about the people, you got to work with them. When we started the new company, I want to share, because I'm trying to be like someone said, you got to listen. I think it might have been Aaron, like this new time, like listen to what people are saying. And my workforce is mostly women. There's about 40 people who work at Complete Care. We basically set up, I said, guys, let's make this a company we want it to be. Every month we have a 3-day weekend. We have 19 holidays a year, including between Christmas and New Year, because everyone's always scrambling to figure out how they're going to take that off. And I say, you know what, forget it. We're all taking it off. We're closing down the company. But what that means, and I say to folks is, okay, here are our discrete metrics for what we must achieve. As long as we can hit those goals, I'm good, right? So I'm trying to think about what the new workplace should look like. So I think women in leadership roles have to have courage to go after that, to define that, to make the rules, and say, this is what we're doing at Complete Care. So if you want to work with us, that's what we're doing here. So far, it's been very well received by I think I only have guys, like 5 guys who work for me. The rest are women. And that it's been very well received. So people are very kind of relieved they get a 3-day weekend. We also do 2 personal days. We had 3 last year. We're down to 2 this year, but that you can choose to do whatever you want with that time. And I encourage people, hey, get your doctor's appointments done. Whatever you need to get done, do that with that time. So we have regular company meetings, and we really, every time we meet, emphasize, hey, you got these days, please use them. So I think women have to bring courage to the new workplace and stand up for things we know that we all needed when we were starting our careers out, right? No one told me to do any of these things that I'm doing now. I'm doing for my companies, but I wish someone had said, hey, it's okay for you. You have 3 weeks vacation. It's actually okay for you to take it. We're not saying, right? So lots of opportunities here to lead for women. So I'm excited about, all the things I'm hearing from these panelists.
Cheryl, to your point, nobody gave us a primer on how to do this, just like with parenting, right? A lot of it is trial and error, and you bring your humanity to the table and you figure out, well, this doesn't make sense, or this is how I need to react to that situation. I had a similar experience in terms of my staff. I mean, people were grieving losses. People lost their parents and didn't tell their colleagues because they just wanted to, sit with it and kind of press through. We had all sorts of losses. We had 2 of our staff lost their spouses during the pandemic. And so same kind of thing. It's that responsiveness, it's that flexibility, it's acknowledging our humanity, and that work is a community, that it is a community that you co-create, and that we all should be invested in one another's success. So we did First Fridays, no meetings on Fridays, no Zoom, no having to sit in front of your computer all day. You get to have that focused time, right? And really instead of opening every meeting talking about work, we checked in. How are you doing? How are you? And I remember the first time we had an event in person, I got to the event and I looked at all the volunteers, and it was all of my staff who lived alone. All of the singletons were like, I got to get out the house. I need to be in community with other people. And so, the other piece that we as women bring is this insight and perspective and just sort of this attunement and intuition. I think it's really, really important to bring that to work and not be afraid to bring it to work. And I think in years past, it was not popular to have that kind of flexibility in the workplace. And the pandemic has made it okay.
I wanted to ask you, Cheryl, or anybody, to talk more about that concept of sponsorship. You know, we know what it means to have a mentor, the person that you can call and say, hey, you know, this is what's happening, kind of that professional person that you lean on. And maybe you can even answer, how do you find that person when they don't seem obvious? If you're looking out at the, you know, landscape of your colleagues or your board or what have you, how do you identify, and as we've been saying, lean into that? Sometimes we call them an ally. I know that word has other meanings too, but how do you find that person? And I love what you said, that wants to make sure you're okay. So many times at work, you're fighting and proving yourself. But how do you find that person? Or do anybody have any advice or thoughts on that notion of sponsorship?
So look, I can start that one off. You know, when you're seeking a sponsor, you've already been very thoughtful about, like, what is it that I'm very good at? You really want to be honest with yourself. I'm very good at this. I like doing this. I've achieved this at this company in terms of, you know, what I've been able to deliver on in my role. And then you take that to a sponsor and say, hi, these are, you know, thank you so much. I'm really looking for a sponsor. Here is who I am. I'm good at this. I enjoy doing this. At this company, I see, you know, a couple of roles, perhaps. I love your insight on what you see here potentially for me. Or you might decide it's best to move on to another company. You shouldn't think that, hey, just because you don't move up here that you're not doing okay. It might be time for you to go once you hit a certain spot in an organization, depending on how big it is. So I think it's different than mentorship, meaning you're further along in my space. You're further along and you're able to define what you've done well. And you're able to sort of decide, I think this is where I'm headed. What is your thoughts? And if you have ideas about how I'd move forward, you may not say, will you sponsor me on the first date? It may be a dance and you may have another meeting. So a sponsor, there's a little bit more that goes into it than the mentor piece. So I would encourage folks to be, you want to be patient. It's not always, okay, will you sponsor me? Well, I just met you. So let's hold on a minute. Usually a sponsor will do a little background check, they'll check and see, and then because depending on what role they recommend, like you're trying to make a role to jump to director or vice president, or you could be trying to your first jump to manager, they're going to want to check your references and know kind of who you are and whatnot, because that sponsor will make a call for you. They will put that letter in for you, and they are staking their reputation on the recommendation for you. So it's a little bit more serious and more of a commitment. But so that's kind of one of the way, just how I've experienced it over the years.
You, I think we all, I love, having that confidence, and we're all listing our list of accomplishments. But as Wynton Marsalis and many other people have said, Wynton says, I'm constantly a student of the music, constantly learning. And I'm sure there are plenty of other artists and professionals that have said that too. Ladies, what other areas, where are you seeking to grow in your career professionally? What areas are you still seeking to grow? Or like we were saying before, do you feel like I've always hired somebody to help with that because that's just not my thing? So where are you seeking to grow, or where is that area that's maybe a blind spot or something that you're like, not trying to be that, I'm this? There must be something.
I was laughing. It was like, you stumped us all, really, Heather? Yeah, I guess for me, I'm figuring out, sort of the new path forward. I think most people know I'm running for Congress at this point. Thank you. It's growing in fearlessness, I would say, and recognizing that it's okay to be bold and you don't need anybody's permission, to step out there and to step fearlessly into whatever the future may be and embrace that and understand that whatever God has in front of you is greater than what was behind you. And so for me, I guess it's just where I am, in terms of this station in my life. In terms of, in the context of work, my focus had really been around preparing our organization for the next level. So what areas did we need to shore up? Where were we weak in terms of our infrastructure? And one of the things that I wanted to really focus on was professional development for everybody. So we actually brought on a director of organizational development whose responsibility it was to create a professional development plan for every single person in the organization. Because my thing was, if we're going to be about workforce development, we can't talk about it, we got to be about it. And if we can be about it for the community at large, and we can be about it for the employers that we're working with, we need to be about it for ourselves. So it was about holding ourselves to higher standards and making the investment into ourselves in the same way that we were investing into other people as part of our work. Like, why couldn't we turn that inward as well? So that was something that was very important to me. And I think as I, look out just across companies in general, I think one of the things that we as women should certainly strive to take advantage of is those opportunities for our own professional growth and development.
Yeah, for me, thank you for sharing that, because you're sparking in me. I wasn't stumped. I was actually looking for my notes. And I was like, wait, what was I saying? Well, there are two things. One is really specific, right, in terms of the world of education. But I will, so that's one. The other is professional development. And so if you will, the professional development can spark across these two avenues that I'm thinking of growing in. One, I may or may not have a title that is in tune, I think, to the earlier points. We don't have to have the title. Leadership is beyond that. I really want to think about is the impact. What is the impact that I can have on education? And how can that develop people? How can that develop authenticity? How can that tap into the natural brilliance of everyone, right? No matter what gender or what race or what gender identity, right? Like, I want it to cross factors. And so I have been able to implement some of the pieces. Certainly, I'm trying to bring it to a point where it can live in spaces and it's attached to technology. And so let me be a little more specific. I'd like to revamp the way we evaluate people. I want to revamp the way we grade people in schools, because I feel that, again, to transformation and systems, our young people do not graduate with a knowledge of themselves or their skill sets. And I'm actually seeing that it limits them, and it forces them into a standard that does not fit us. It doesn't fit anyone. So how do I create? And I've already started experimenting. I'm trying to figure out how to put it at, at a level that it can scale and impact, right? And students can graduate saying, these are my skill sets. This is what I'm brilliant in. I think you might have lost my picture because I got a call. And how are they able to articulate their own strengths? And I don't call them weaknesses. I'm very sorry. It is not a part of my vocabulary. It is really about knowing your worth and knowing where your next level is. And that is perpetual. And that is a lifetime. And so even at 70, we can have another level of understanding and performance that will benefit not only ourselves, not only our company, but our world and our communities and our families. And so, stay tuned. It's coming, you all.
Well, Cynthia, I just want to add, though, I have two children with ADHD, a senior in high school and a college junior. And so one of the things I did with them, I had them do one of these personality assessments Because like you said, and my daughter read this article just recently, we were reading it together, that the way the classical school system defines you may not capture all of your strengths. So I've been really working with her to help her understand, baby, you, like you, Karen said earlier, you're enough. Like, okay, well, what do you have going on? Let's figure out what that is. Let's quantify that, and we'll think about your go forward based on that. So I've had to do that for my own. And so Cynthia, maybe I should come work with you, but I want to.
Let's work together.
So, but I feel like, honestly, you said, well, what's next? Like, Heather, I kind of forgot the question, but can I just let me make some comments. I may hit on the question. A couple of things. One, to whom much is given, much is received, right? Much is required. So that's kind of how I've always lived. My parents, that's, old school Baptist in the South. And that's, that's just who we were raised to be. So I've been really thinking about, how do I replace myself? When I hit 54 years old now, I'm starting to think, okay, well, I want to be sure that when I go, I'm not taking it all with me. I'm leaving at least 10 people who are doing the work that I've been doing in health disparities and health equity, and starting new companies that answer very complicated questions that may challenge the status quo. But if you're listening, listen to what is going on. We're trying to answer those really hard questions. So we're not a soundbite. We really are going deep here. So I'm really working on, how do I do that? So I have been doing a lot of mentoring and sponsoring the women in my company. I got 5 women. I call up, they're my B band, my Bay band, trying to teach them how to be executives, how to make decisions, et cetera, right? So, and then the final thing, I'll stop here, is that now I get to sort of decide what I do, and I'm really working like those quantitative tests. There's one I really love, the Colby Index, that I'm really working on. Hey, this is Cheryl. So I want to ride out. This is how I want to ride it out. This is what I want to do. And now I get to choose. I'm working on making those types of choices. So, but I think starting early, Cynthia, with kids, I think we could save people a lot of pain if the school system were more, and parents also were armed with some tools to help their kids, help guide and direct them in the way that they might go. It may not be college, guys. There's so many careers that you can earn 6 figures and you can do well and you can enjoy yourself and you're feeling fulfilled. So I love to see us do more of that starting now with kids in my daughter's age as they move along in the world. So.
I love that.
Yeah, these
I'm
two. Oh,
totally with you on not calling them weaknesses. And I think we have enormous power in helping others see their ways of learning or developing as harnessing those powers and opportunities. So I had a terrible time learning math traditionally in school. And so when I got out of school and got my first job, I worked in the evenings to help GED students. And I worked with them in math because we spoke a different language. It was just, we could learn it and we could be empowered by it, but it wasn't a traditional way of learning. So I think there's amazing beauty that can come from expressing that vulnerability and helping other people develop strengths from it. And I'm most excited in terms of what I'm going to develop next is incredible programming and work on the South and West sides with UCAN and with others. We're really committed to helping 3,000 plus young Black and Hispanic people increase their access to high quality jobs. And my company sees at the end of the day, we're an employer of talent that's been in Chicago for 100 years and wants to be there for 100 more. So how can we increase early career exposure, paid internships, credentialing, and hiring so we can be a better company going forward? And I really have to credit, Claude and Girls in the Game and Step Up and so many partners that have helped show us how we can be a true partner for the long term. And so I'm most excited about doing that in ways that make an impact in the community, but also help PepsiCo sustain its business and grow, because that's when we're going to continue to show up and invest.
Well, Erin brings up a really good point, though. Like the type of investments that they're making is critical to them having the workforce that they want. And so, I'd love to see more, honestly, employers doing, Complete Care is a tiny example with 40 employees. Pepsi has thousands and thousands, but all of us thinking about how we invest in the workforce so that they are who we want to be. I want to share with you guys, years ago, when we first started Next Level Health. Again, I'm always trying to identify opportunities for leadership. I took my own money, and for the women who I wanted to coach along, I paid for them, paid $1,000 each for them to meet with a personal stylist, because I noticed that their wardrobe was, they needed to tweak it a bit so that when they walk into a room, they've got that presence. And so even now, I work with a couple of them still. I see some of the things that they mix in with their outfits, and the style really helped them. She took them to Burlington, TJ Maxx, Marshalls, and maybe picked a couple pieces from Macy's and was able to help them pull together professional careers. So the other thing we also want to think about is that presence piece, and how we sort of coach our managers to directors along with how they come into a room and how they interact, right? So I love this investment that PepsiCo is making with UCAN into that sort of that brick and mortar part of building out careers. But also, let's think about the executive presence piece. I'd love to see that be a part of what, yeah, I've seen that affect a lot of women, right? As I'm interacting in rooms, and I can see that being a place where we all might want to lean in. I mean, I do individual coaching, but there's opportunities, I think, for a more population-based approach there as well.
We talked about that a little bit at the beginning. I mean, it's when you call it fashion, you call it clothes, it's executive presence, and it's how it makes you feel. If you're in a room of people, I want to feel the same way. I want to feel that strength and that power. We're going to move into Q&A in just a bit. So if you've got any questions, audience, please make sure you put them in the Q&A and we'll end with a message to women and girls that I'll ask of each of our panelists. But before we get into the Q&A, this is one question I really wanted to make sure to get to. So if we could just give some brief answers. 42% of women say they have consistently felt burned out at work. So this is in 2021, post 2020, et cetera. So can you each talk about some of your self-care, happiness, joy inducing rituals, or it could be the smallest little thing. I'm here enjoying my iced coffee, for instance, or even something bigger and more ritualistic.
So I redid my bathroom during the pandemic. I have been saving to do this. I've been in my house for 20 some years, and my bathrooms just desperately needed to be upgraded. And my bliss is I shut that door, I turn the lights out, I light the candles, and I take the hottest bath I can tolerate and just let everything else go away. The other piece that has been really, really important to me during this pandemic that I did sparingly before, not as intensely as I do now, is meditation and prayer every single day. It just helps to get me centered in the morning and to set my day. And the final thing, I have not been doing it thanks to this campaign, but last year I lost 40 pounds, and it was from doing high intensity interval training at least 3 to 4 days a week. And it just did me good to start the mornings off that way, because I was in tune, mind, body, and soul. And so it was just really important. And I miss it now. I realize I have to weave that in. But it's just so important, I think, for us to be centered, mind, body, and soul.
Yeah, I have to agree. There are two ways I think about it. One is what is in the everyday, and then where is the flow, right? In the calendar year. So the everyday is I want my cappuccino in the morning from my local Mexican-owned coffee shop, right? I'm going to invest in my neighborhood where I grew up in, and invest in my community. So that is for me. I get to drink my coffee. It tastes really good, and it gets me started in my day, and it smells good and it tastes good. So I got all the senses, and I'm contributing, right, to my community. So in the flow, in the calendar, you really got to look at your calendar. You've got to look at where do you need some relief in a different way. And so after the pandemic, again, being able to care and carry as a woman, unfortunately, my husband did get COVID as a result, I do believe he did have heart attacks, 4 of them. And that was in relationship to that, I think, to COVID. You know, I broke my leg, my mom got sick. There was just so much going on. And so after really being on lockdown for all of that time, I said, my 50th birthday is coming. I am leaving the United States and going to Puerto Rico. And I'm going to be in the waterfalls, in the ocean, in the sun, on the sand. I'm going to eat really good food. And I was there for 7 days, took my retreat for work there, and then really just invested in, again, local places of Puerto Rican people, and wanted to invest back, especially after what has happened to their island. And again, investing in people, investing in humanity, investing in healing, and really looking at what I was eating as well as what I was investing in and enjoying in the, you know, it was waterfalls and oceans. So it was beautiful. And so think about it in that way. What's the everyday and what's the flow in the calendar?
Anybody else sharing?
We could all be in a waterfall. That is heavenly. My learnings have been more on the day to day, and my big coming to Jesus has been that stress will always win. And you know, I struggled with the plight of perfection that we talked about earlier my whole life, and finally had to make decisions for myself about how I was going to manage that differently every day. And I join you, Karen, in starting off with meditation, and I can feel a difference when I don't. And it's the little things like just standing up and taking a walk in the middle of the day. I never would have given myself permission to do that. It wasn't anybody else. It was myself. I'm a better person for it. And I feel the benefits. So those small changes and investments in yourself, I think, can really enhance your life every day.
Yeah, I like, you know, really everything you guys saying. Aaron, I did the same thing. I figured out that I could take a 5 or 10 minute walk. I could just walk out my house and spin around. I was like, oh my goodness, I never even thought I could do that. So that was a really big sort of revelation, guys. I mean, like I said, some of this is like, wait, this isn't rocket science. I could literally just walk outside for 10 minutes and it makes a difference, right? The other thing though is every Sunday, and I didn't get the everyday meditation down, which I know it's a good thing. I just couldn't do it. I could though. Every Sunday, I listen to WVON has the gospel sister Pam Morris, and she plays wonderful inspirational music. I grew up playing gospel music on the piano, so from the South, it was just a big part of who I am. But Pam knows, she knows all these people. She knows Reverend Clay Evans, who was, you know, on the South Side of Chicago with his church, and he's sort of one of the fathers of gospel music. And every Sunday I would listen to her. And my kids would be like, oh, Mom, you listen to that same music again? I'm like, yes, guys, this is my meditation. This is your history, please. Can I have the room? So they would come in and, you know, like, leave me alone. I'm enjoying this. But and routine is really important. It was very comforting. She ends every Sunday at 2:45, 2:03 with the Staple Singers, who are also from Chicago. And she would play Respect. And then she ends with Reverend Clay Evans singing All Night, All Day, Angels Watching Over Me. And it's a very famous song. You should check it out, but it's very comforting. And I thought, you know, I really had this angels are watching over me as I go into this week, fighting a good fight. You know, I'm always choosing an uphill battle to fight, right? So so it really took me into, and so I did that, guys, for literally 2 years. I've been doing the exact same thing. And like, I think it was Karen, you saying if I miss it, then I'm like a little bit off because I'm going, God, I'm missing all night, all day to take me into the week. So thanks for asking that question, Heather. We rarely get to sort of talk about, like, you know, ourselves. So
I think it's important. And I think we'll all be tuning in on Sunday now to catch that. And that whole idea of ritual, like the same time every day. That's just beautiful, beautiful. Thank you all, ladies, for sharing. I'm going to go to the Q&A section. Thank you, Zoom, for adding this little section. One of the first questions we got was from Julia Klein. And she says, I love the commentary about how we as women are particularly gifted at bringing the topic of healing to workplaces. But I'm curious, how do you all see workplaces in general, i.e. how open are all the men at this point to talking about healing, including, of course, their own need for it?
I'll tell you, my experience has been that
once we broke down the walls and made it safe to have those discussions, a lot of the men in my organization showed up for those conversations. And one of the things that I added as just a practice during the pandemic was I paid for guided meditation. And so we had somebody who would come in, we did Monday meditation. So every Monday afternoon, and I think it was 4:30, she would lead the whole staff. And, at first there was this, do people really want to go? Do you want people to see you going? And then people just fully embraced it. And I had done, I forget how many sessions. And then folks were like, hey, wait, it's over. Can you do that again? And so then, then we resumed it. And we had our fair share of men who went. And, and we have openly talked about, particularly because of just the amount of loss during the pandemic, we openly talked about, therapists and getting mental health support. And it was interesting to me to see the men come around. I can tell you, in my experience at work, I have had as many men come in my office and sit down and sob as I have women. I probably have had more men, honestly, I'm saying like over the past 15 years, 20 years. So I don't think that I don't think that it's off-putting to all of them. There may be some who are not wired that way and don't want to talk about it. And so those are the folks who are not going to be engaged in the conversation. But I think that it was an invitation to allow folks to connect more deeply and to acknowledge that they needed assistance when they did.
Yeah, I appreciate what Karen and Shara have been speaking to in terms of what they have brought to their workplaces. I think that is an investment in healing. I think there's also a shift in society because of this pandemic and the multiple pandemics there are, including one of race. And so we're really starting to be more aware. I do think that we're in that space of going back and forth of like, but that's what I'm used to, that's what I know, and that's what I've been trained to do. But people are in inquiry. They are shifting to want to know more, and they want to embrace the word. The person I work with right now that doesn't want to embrace birth, she states that she's uncomfortable with the word healing because she doesn't know. And that's, again, how do we start bringing that into the conversation? So infrastructure still needs to move. It still needs to change. It'll take a minute, but our mindsets are starting to move in that direction. And I feel like we're really trying to be innovative about how we do it, including even maybe taking one work day off of the work week so people can actually get some work done and process.
Katrina Waddy says, speak to the notion that everybody has something, some gift that can help or support others. For instance, if you're not the hiring person, perhaps you can make that connection to that person, provide a referral recommendation, or make time for a lunch or a coffee meeting.
This is go ahead, Cheryl.
No, I was going to say, I mean, I agree. So yeah, we're with you. I think along the way, like I said, the workforce really, the workplace is really a collective. If you see someone that's, doing something you like, or has a way about the way in the workplace, or has been successful, I think it's always good to interact and connect. And I think most people are open to, making that time. I would say absolutely.
Yeah, I don't think you have to have formal mentorship relationships. I think it happens organically. Certainly I've been sought out for that formal relationship, but I have a ton of, informal mentees. But getting back to the issue about gifts, it is so important that we, just to Cynthia's point, it's so important that we help our young people understand who they are and what they bring to the table, what their strengths are, and frankly, how they monetize their gifts. Like, that is what our economy is about, right? At the end of the day, how do you monetize those things that you're really good at and that bring you joy?
and build a life doing this thing that brings you joy, that leverages the innate talents and abilities that you have. And so until we reframe how we look at what people bring to the table, and how we just self-assess and then help others assess themselves, we're going to continue to have this conundrum and this disconnect between what we get taught in school and what the world of work actually is asking of us. I think it is really critical that for managers, again, I don't care what your title is, but if you have a team, if you have people that are responsive to you, I think you have a responsibility to discern for yourself what their strengths, what their gifts are, and then help them understand what those things are, and then to cultivate those and make them stronger and better for them and for you, whether they put those gifts to use at your company or out in the world in the future. I'll quickly close on this. When I was in Germany, looking at the German manufacturing model, one of the things that struck me was that they had 3 different pathways into adulthood. You could either go to a traditional school, you could do an apprenticeship, or you could go right to work. And the thing was that if you went into an apprenticeship and you worked at Siemens and then left Siemens after your 3 years of apprenticeship and decided to go work for BMW, that wasn't seen as a negative, because what they thought, they were thinking about the collective. They were thinking about the fact that their labor force as a whole would be skilled, and what a privilege it was for those people to come and get their skills here and then take them somewhere else out into the country. Our mentality is, you belong to me, and if I invest in you, then you owe me, right? And so until we have this more expansive view of, I've helped you build up your skills and your gifts, and now we put it out into the universe, and you're going to go do good for all of us, we're going to continue to struggle.
Wow. What a way of looking at it.
I love, Katrina, the point that you're raising here. And I just want to add to it. We've talked a lot about mentors and sponsors. I really learned the hard way the importance of investing in my peer network. I was so busy, heads down, running for just to be the work the hardest I possibly could at all costs. I never stood up and went for lunch with colleagues. I didn't go for the walk that we just talked about until, like, the pandemic hit. So I learned the hard way that, God, those relationships have given me such blessings personally and perspective, but also they've helped me come up. They've been a resource for me in figuring out who I am and what I want, so I can have a conversation with them that I couldn't have with a sponsor. And we all get pulled up and in different directions, go to different places. They're going to take you with them if you have that relationship of trust and advocacy. So that would just be a learning that I offer from my own experience.
Yeah, if I may add a caveat.
Yeah.
I would like to invite everyone here to think about, and this is something I do with executives and leaders, principals. What are your listening filters? And that is going to inform you. So you have to listen and catch how you're listening to others. And you want to think about how you're doing that, because that is going to determine whether you see something in them or not. And that also translates unconsciously to how you support someone. I challenged myself in 2005 when I was coaching a principal, and in my head, I was like, she's not doing what she needs to do. She's not leading. She's not following through. Like, what is going on? And then I caught myself. The way I was listening to her was from a deficient frame, which meant that I was not doing my job. I was not doing the work of assessing her and showing her her brilliance and her talents. It doesn't mean that everyone is going to fit every job, but if you open that aperture, then you're going to open up possibility for someone, and you can even coach them somewhere else if you need to, but not if you're only in a deficient frame. So I just want to invite us. I think it's also the means by which we continue to uphold structures of oppression of people of color as well as women. We do it to ourselves. Men will do it to us. So how are we opening, those our listening to see that strengthen people and then build them up?
I wish every teacher, principal, boss, parent could hear that. What a different way we would look at each other and look at the world. Marian has, now we've got 5 minutes, but this one could go. This, like Cheryl said, this could be a completely another workshop. Advise on coping with bias. I have lived in a power chair for more years than I can say. I am a woman of color, yet I still have to do more than three people to be validated as a person. Work harder, twice as hard. Any advice?
This is you know, kind of my coaching forte, right? I am an equity leadership coach. My frame and my frameworks are anti-racism. It's looking at systems and how they perpetuate, and then how they show up in us. So one of the things that is, it has shown up in me, has shown up for me, against me. What I have learned on the journey is, again, that asset framing. Believe in yourself, believe in your brilliance beyond someone else's belief of you. And even if you feel like they should be believing in you, like they're from your ethnicity, your culture, they're from your gender, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. You have to believe in yourself. That one, believe in yourself, and then reflect. Reflect on what it is that you are growing and moving in. What aren't you? And what do you need to be able to do that? Because you cannot believe in yourself only and not do the work to grow and to see what those areas are for that growth. And then connect to others and connect with others and uplift each other. And so I would say those are three things that I coach. I actually do coach, you know, men of color, you know, women of color, white women, and all of these things show up in all of us. And so I really coach directly to imposter syndrome. I coach directly on all the isms, even those of different sexual orientation. Like I tell them, yes, you're right. You're probably being microaggressed. Now, what are you learning from that process? Now, I have to, of course, embrace the feelings, go and do that self-care, do collective self-care, invest in your healing, and then reflect with me. And how are we going to move forward? Because there's some power that I have definitely found in the face of doubt, and still standing in that brilliance and still standing in that worth. And we've got to be able to do that for each other. So I would say, think about those three things.
Cynthia, I think that's a great segue into winding down just a bit. If each of us could think about a one sentence message that you would give to today's women and girls. And I'm saying girls consistently as the mother of a 5-year-old, you know, what do we want to tell our little girls as well? So one sentence message to women and girls. While you think about that, I just want to say thank you to each of you, Erin, Cynthia, Cheryl, Karen, all of our behind the scenes, our UCAN family, Bianca, everybody that's pulled this together. Thank you all so much for pulling us together. I'm honored to be among you and to have met all of you. And I'm sure there's some connections here. And I'm just going to throw out some words that have hit us. And I know, like I said, the chat is just going great. We're going to build each other up. We're going to acknowledge our humanity. We're going to call the thing a thing, whatever that thing may be. We're going to believe in ourselves. We're going to look at our flow, our day-to-day flow and our calendar. We're going to take care of ourselves. We're going to speak up. We're going to speak out, and we're going to heal, and we're going to help others heal, and we're going to lead this thing on into the future. So with that, if each of you could give your one sentence message to women and girls this wonderful Women's History Month.
I'm going to leave the message that my mother instilled in me. I was not allowed to say the word can't when I was growing up. My mother said, you can do anything you set your mind to, even eat an elephant. You just have to do it one bite at a time. So one bite at a time, girls.
I'll say know yourself, and that means understanding and acknowledging your values so that you can live up and access your fullest potential.
I'll bring to the table that life is a process. You never perfect anything. So we can each accept ourselves as we are, with our gifts that we've been given, and live in this moment.
I would definitely say stay rooted in hope and power.
Heather, you're on mute.
Thank you. You know, it's only been 2 years that we've been doing Zoom. As we close out, I'm going to ask everybody that's out there in the chat, let's just do a flood of emojis. Let's just do a waterfall of hearts and fire and fists and some really, really good energy. I see you, Adriana, talking about LOL to me. I see a strong arm. So let's just do a waterfall of emojis. I see kisses, hugs, strength that we're going to share with each other as we part. And I'd like to bring on to close from UCAN, Sherry Thomas. Keep those floods of emojis going.
Sherry's on mute too.
I done kicked off the mute.
Heather, you're rubbing off on me. This was absolutely amazing. I don't know if you guys noticed, but it was a pretty dreary day today. And now the sun is shining. So all these facts and all this light and love you were sharing today, it made the clouds move a little so that the sun could come out. So many wonderful messages that I learned. I'm Sherry Thomas, Senior Vice President at UCAN. I've worked at UCAN it'll be 17 years in August. This day is already a beautiful day for me because this is my son's birthday. So this is the 17 years ago is when my womanhood changed for the better. But some of the things that are going to stay with me forever, the listening filters. Cynthia, the whole idea around knowing your listening filters was so impactful because that example that you gave, I've been there where you're just automatically thinking negatively in a way, but not really listening to the need and the strength. That stayed with me. Cheryl, is there an application for a sponsor? Never had a sponsor. I've had a mentor. I've had plenty through my years, but a sponsor is something that I don't think a lot of people think about. So I'm taking that with me. The plight of perfection, Aaron, I think that's something all of us have dealt with. The imposter syndrome, trying to be perfect. Is it okay to go pick up my kid for, in my case, basketball practice? Things like that. So I just want to thank you all for your time. Karen, calling a thing a thing. I know Heather just mentioned that, but that is so true and insightful. But I want to thank you for spending the time with us today. And you guys are doing such a great job. And I feel very empowered. And you know, they say empowered women empower women. And I feel like that's what you guys did today. So on behalf of UCAN, I want to thank you again. Heather, it's always good to see you as always. And Bianca, fantastic job and have a good rest of your day.